Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here's your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Wilson. I am the founder and host of the People in Fundraising nonprofit conversation series. And this morning, I'm delighted to welcome Kyle Garvey to our program. Hello, Kyle.
Hi, Tim.
How are you?
Doing well today. Thanks.
Great. It's good to see you again. So for listeners, Kyle and I worked together at Harvard Business School about 10 years ago. And at the time he was at Harvard Business School, we were kind of like right next to each other. I was in prospect research in one corner of the building, and he was a staff assistant starting out in fundraising at HBS. And I think you were sharing a big cubicle. I think it was called a double wide.
That's right. It had been a corner office prior to becoming a cubicle. So
okay.
Little corner cube.
Dynamite. And I was impressed with Kyle at that time, starting out in fundraising and following his career. He's had a really diverse and interesting career journey at several institutions in the East Coast so far, which was a major reason why I wanted to have Kyle on the program today. So thanks again for joining us today, Kyle.
Happy to do it, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah. So Kyle, I'll just introduce you by your current title, your institution, and then if you want to take it from there and share with our audience how you entered the fundraising field,
Sure.
What did you consider doing coming out of college, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
So I would probably describe, getting into fundraising as a bit more of an accident. It ended up being an intentional accident, but certainly definitely an accident. I was a political science and public policy major at a liberal arts college, Trinity College. And I graduated and really didn't have a concrete plan of what I was going to do next. Didn't have a job. Thought about, law school, thought about getting into politics, working in campaigns and in government, that crossed my mind. But I figured I had an opportunity to move right to Boston, specifically Cambridge, with my college roommate. His family had a series of apartments, and so it's kind of going to be a low budget exercise to move right to the city. So that was exciting and attractive. And so three of us moved right in, and I kind of spent my first summer, trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do. And so spent a lot of time kind of, as you typically do, networking and talking to people. And at that time you're, fresh out of college. And so you don't have a huge network.
Sure.
It's more kind of working, your parents or your friends' parents' network. And so that bore some fruit for me. And that's how I came in touch with another former colleague of ours at HBS, Corinne O'Connor. And, we talked for a while, and she kind of told me about her job. And she was a kind of entry-level development associate. And, she said, hey, there's plenty of positions, there's stuff happening, you should apply for one of them. And I thought about it, and I think eventually I applied and, got that first kind of entry-level fundraising job at Harvard Business School, working with the kind of younger alumni segment. So the kind of, I think it was at that time, it was like 0 to 17 year out kind of crowd.
Yes.
And so, that was my first job. I think in the back of my head, the things that attracted me most to the work and the role, first in college, I had an internship with a congressman,
Okay.
U.S. rep, from Connecticut, and quickly kind of realized that the only thing that they really do is fundraise. They don't do much else. And so it's your kind of typical dialing for dollars and events and
Oh, sure.
mailers and things like that. And so I did some of that work. And so I kind of thought back to that and said, that was kind of interesting. It was kind of fun, but it was also, politicians are largely selling something.
Yes.
They're usually selling themselves and what they can do for you as a constituent, as a
Right.
tax-paying American. And so, when you're doing nonprofit fundraising, you're largely, selling something as well. It's not a product or a service necessarily, but it's the kind of the art of philanthropy and helping people realize what they care about and how they can make a difference in what they care about. And so that sales angle, that kind of psychology angle really attracted me to the profession. And so I said, what, let's give it a try. I didn't know a ton about Harvard Business School at the time beyond the obvious,
Sure.
which is, pretty impeccable institution, beautiful campus. And I'm sure, the alumni, staff and faculty were going to be pretty impressive. And, at the end of the day, I think the biggest argument for, working for Harvard is one that we often used in our fundraising pitches. And that was like, look, there's a lot of ways you can invest money to make a difference in the world. And one of them is Harvard. And you can say they don't need it, but they can do a lot more with it than a lot of other places, and probably a lot more with it that you want to do. And so they can make that happen. And so that was attractive too. And so that's how I got to HBS as a freshly graduated college senior.
That's awesome. And you're now the associate director of major gifts for the College of Engineering at Northeastern University. So just tell us a little bit about how long you've been there and what your focuses are in that role.
Sure. So been at Northeastern for about 5 months now. I started in February of this year. And as you mentioned, I specifically, I'm a fundraiser for major gifts at the College of Engineering. And so, and even a little bit more specific to that, I work very closely with the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. So we kind of have two assignments. We have a department assignment, and that's my department assignment. And then we have a regional assignment. And you do fundraising for the entire college with your regional assignment. And for me, that's kind of the southeast of the United States, mostly Florida, and then the mid-Atlantic, the kind of DC, Maryland, Virginia triangle. That's where I'll be spending most of my time. And it's an interesting place. I'm still kind of getting my feet under me. Having come from Harvard, it's a decentralized model of fundraising organization in terms of on the ground. All the different colleges at Northeastern have their own fundraising teams, and the size of them is determined by the kind of size of the alumni base within that college. And so, College of Engineering, DeMoore McKim School of Business, those are the bigger alumni bases, so they have bigger fundraising teams. Health sciences, professional studies, they're much smaller. They have much smaller teams. So it's decentralized in that way. But then the services side is completely centralized. And so that's everything from gifts processing to marketing and events and stewardship. That's all kind of housed in the same place at the kind of university advancement level. And
Okay.
kind of all of our goals and kind of metrics come down from the university level at the macro level.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's interesting, but
yeah.
still getting my feet wet, but it's been it's been exciting. It's another kind of great institution that's really growing, and its rankings improving, in the last few years, and it's been an exciting place so far.
That's dynamite. And before we went live, Kyle and I were talking, just catching up, and you mentioned to me that the institution was still kind of locked down in terms of fundraiser travel until the spring. So
Yeah.
So what's the status with the travel now?
Yeah, like a lot of places, they had kind of a moratorium on, business travel, unless it was a real special circumstance. And then that was lifted sometime in, I think, late April, early May.
Okay.
And between that time and then the end of our fiscal year, which was June 30th, you had to kind of submit for approval to travel anywhere. It was not a huge thing, but you had to kind of, versus in the old days, you'd just be planning your trips and going the places you needed to go.
Yeah.
But that's now lifted for the most part. So a lot of those kind of shackles have been taken off. So
nice.
I think mostly back to business as usual. Although I think like a lot of places, I'm not sure the same prolific travel schedules will exist the way they once did. Just because I think we proved, obviously that you can do a lot virtually. And there is some, excess and likely waste in some of the travel we do. So I think kind of cleaning a little bit of that up is going to be happening, and is going to be a permanent kind of fixture in how we work going forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's a very interesting time, and to see the necessary alterations the institutions have had to make in response to the pandemic, and what sticks and what goes back to normal. There'll be case studies for years about pandemic impact on businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you certainly can't do this work entirely virtually,
right?
But you don't have to do this work entirely on the road and in person either. And
sure,
I mean, that seems like almost like a cop-out answer, but it's true. And I think people are tiring, frankly, of an excess of kind of Zoom and virtual meetings.
Yes.
But then there's other meetings that can simply just happen much more efficiently over Zoom, and there's no need to get together. So
right.
It's a classic happy medium.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So thank you, Kyle, for talking about the beginning of your career and now where you are today. My follow-up is if you could just chart the course of your career. And again, as I mentioned in the intro, you've held successive roles in fundraising at various institutions. And if you could just, plot the course of that, and then I've got a follow-up for you when we get to the end of your career trajectory, which is how have you made time to not only learn the alumni base, the donor base of the institutions you worked at, but just the nuts and bolts of the initiatives that you're raising money for at these institutions. So take as much time as you want. I know it's a two-parter, so.
Yeah. So, the plot goes like this. So as I mentioned, started at HBS in that entry level role, did that for a few years, got promoted to a coordinator position, which was kind of something between a entry level and a frontline fundraiser, and did that for a few years, and then got promoted to assistant director, which was in those days, okay, you've got your own portfolio, you've got your own reunions, you've got your own strategy for those things. You go hit the road and make it happen.
Yeah.
And did that for a few years. And so that was kind of my, it was kind of, I don't know, every 2.5 years or so was a promotion, and that was great.
That's awesome.
I think I was around 7 years at HBS. And, at that time, people start leaving, things start changing. You kind of look at yourself and wonder where you fit into the kind of matrix of how things are changing. And, you kind of read the tea leaves, you want to get promoted to something bigger, more of a major gift role, or, a management or whatever it might be. And, I think by the time I'd been doing the assistant director role for a few years, I kind of looked around the room, and it was frankly just a case of, I didn't think there was enough empty chairs, and I didn't know when there was going to be another empty chair. And so, I left HBS on great terms, and I loved my experience there, and just scratched the itch to kind of leave and go do something somewhere else. And that was Harvard Business School, that was Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which is the world's preeminent clinical care and cancer research facility. There's no real other way to put it. Arguably the greatest mission on earth, perhaps. I'm not sure you can argue that either. The people there, the work that they're doing, is it's unbelievable. It's staggering. The impact they have on human beings, human lives, is wildly impressive. It's a real different type of work, just because most of your prospect base, I moved into a major gifts role there, and most of your prospect base is, related to, patients. Whether it's patients themselves, or patients' families, or patients' friends. My role is on the individual giving side, and so that's who I was kind of working with, or kind of, patient groups, which is another group I worked with. And so, I think as wildly impressive and important of a place as it was, for me, I didn't love the work as much as I did higher ed work.
I see.
And that's really what caused me to want to leave again. I was actually promoted recently before I decided to leave. And it just felt to me like, it was I was never going to get that excitement back with the work. I think in higher ed, you're kind of, you're globe-trotting a little bit. You're moving around. You're doing a lot of different things. You're seeing a lot of different people. It's not quite the case at a hospital. And so I just kind of followed my gut and took a position at the MIT Sloan School of Business.
Okay.
Yep. That was a short stop on my trajectory. 7 months. And that one was interesting, and it was going back to a higher ed setting, going back to a business school.
Sure.
But the kind of the way the role was portrayed to me and it described to me really didn't live up to that expectation in practice.
Okay.
It was around the time I was expecting my daughter to be born, and I was just feeling like I needed a break, and so I decided when she came, I was gonna take a bit of a hiatus and
good for you.
Spend some time with her and my wife, and I did that, and decided I'd take some time to find what the right next role was.
Dynamite.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah.
Being around for those first, I think it was 6 weeks or so, 7 weeks.
So cool. I'm glad you did that.
Couldn't have asked for anything more.
Yeah.
It was a great time. I was really happy to be there with my wife to kind of go through that part with her together. And
Yeah.
and part of it too was I hadn't really banked any currency in terms of time off at MIT, and it was just we could afford to do it, so I did it, and it was really rewarding.
That's dynamite.
Still
I
have a
admire
list.
you for doing that, because I feel like there's still a stigma in American work culture for men and fathers to take any time off.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I remember when my first daughter was born 15 years ago, I went to my boss, Sarah Hall, and said, I think I'll take the 2 weeks. And in fact, I think it was you and Nida Januskis who said, Tim, you get at least 4 weeks. Go back to Sarah and you tell her you're taking 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like to think of myself as, a devoted, family person, and, a new dad. Didn't know what that was going to be like, but I really appreciated that feedback, that direction of you're out of your mind, Tim. You turn that around quickly, and it was great. And so for you to take even more time and to be in that position and to want to be there for your family is admirable. So kudos to you.
Yeah, thanks. No, I appreciate that. And so it took a little bit of time, and then I found the right next role, which for me brought me to Harvard Law School, where I was associate director for first leadership giving and then major giving. And I was largely based out on the West Coast.
Oh, okay.
So, San Diego up to Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And I did a little bit of New York work as well, just because at Harvard Law School, the preponderance of alumni are basically between New York and Boston, and so kind of everybody had to do some New York work. But I spent most of my time on the West Coast, and absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. Great people, interesting people, doing a wide range of stuff. It was a lot of fun. And then the birth of my son came along, and I had banked up all the time I needed. So I think when he came, I did 2 weeks. It was because he's an October baby, and so very busy time of year, right around reunions for us. But it took the 2 week. It took the 2 weeks. Then I came back, and I had a bunch of important stuff that was kind of happening around that time. Got that done, and then I took another month after that.
Nice.
So that worked out well.
Wonderful.
And then, it was, how long was I at law school? Maybe 4 years. And then, as we were talking kind of before we went live here, made a real tough family decision at around the summer of 2019, that we were finally going to scratch this itch and move up the coast from Boston to Portland, Maine, where we have some family. And we made the decision in the summer, and I think I left the law school in the fall and started my new job commuting, actually, up in Portland, Maine, at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, which is a marine research institute that has a climate center, community center, runs a school for data and science literacy.
Oh, interesting.
It's doing a lot of different things. It's a really cool place, and then it's got its kind of hard research, marine research angle as well. And then we, as a family, finally moved up there in January of 2020, which, as we all know now, was shortly before the world changed forever through the pandemic. And so this was a totally different change of pace, just given the size and the scope of the work, nothing I'd ever come close to doing before. Very different, just a much smaller operation.
Sure. Yeah.
Completely centralized. We were a scrappy team of 12, 10, and that include, frontline and back of the house data.
Oh, wow.
So it was a small group doing all those things. And so I was doing a combination of both kind of annual leadership giving stuff and then major gift stuff as well, working with our board. So it was kind of a hybrid role, which I loved. And then unfortunately, the move to Maine, the personal move didn't work, largely due to the pandemic. And so we just weren't happy living up there. And so made kind of the tough decision that it just wasn't going to work out. And about a little over a year ago, moved back to the Boston area. And then I kept doing that job, actually commuting a bit.
Wow.
Until this past, end of January.
Okay.
That's when I realized I needed something that was a little closer to home on the day to day. And that's how I ended up at Northeastern.
Dynamite.
And I know it was a two-parter.
Yes.
It was kind of about the, digesting different types of information and all of that across the different organizations I worked. And, I would say that the hardest information to gather and absorb was certainly at Dana-Farber. When you're talking, about the research that's going on in medicine and cancer care, it's very technical.
I bet.
Now, the great thing there was you got an assignment of faculty to work with as a fundraiser, and so I leaned heavily on those faculty who were, outstanding, second to none.
Yeah.
Could certainly make things, they could certainly help you understand things in easily kind of digestible terms, easily understandable terms. And so that was a big, big key for me.
Yeah.
I think, kind of rewinding, going, Harvard Business School, I think did a great job of, helping you understand everything that was going on there. The communication tone was pretty outstanding. The website was second to none. Didn't meet with as many faculty back in those days, just because I was, a pretty young fundraiser and never really had occasion to kind of, do that as much. But, like reunions, I remember the reunions, like those. You learned so much at those reunions because you got to sit in and watch these sessions that they were doing about their research or their teaching instruction or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Or big lectures at the kind of, at the macro level. Those weekends really allowed you to kind of absorb everything and then kind of ask questions and follow up later.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I think at GMRI, Gulf of Maine Research Institute, it was a combination of, easy and hard in a sense, because personally, I'm really interested in climate change. And so a lot of stuff related to that was naturally easier for me to absorb because I have kind of a personal interest in it.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think I appreciate and enjoy kind of fishing and the community angle of fishing. So that stuff was kind of easier for me to absorb. Stuff that was harder there was certainly the kind of data literacy stuff that they're teaching kids and adults, and then the kind of harder kind of marine science that they were doing. That stuff was harder.
I see.
But for a scrappy shop, we had an amazing communications team that was they were really good storytellers. And so when you've got people that are able to do that, you can access those stories. It really helps. And then again, we would work in essence with what amounted to faculty on the marine research side.
Okay.
So yeah, these were our kind of top-notch researchers, scientists that would, talk to you. They were super busy, but they had all the time in the world for us, and they would they really made things easily understandable as well.
Cool.
Yeah, and then I would say the law school stuff was a little bit more natural too, just because of my background.
Yeah.
My wife's an attorney. She went to law school, so it's a pretty big advantage for me there.
Yes. Yeah.
So I really understood clinics. I really understood, all the different research centers. I really understood top 50 law firms and issues at top 50 law firms and all these different things. And so this is a little bit more innate there. So that took a lot less work, frankly. And then here, I'd say it's another kind of place where it's kind of a combination. I think there's some stuff I'm finding much more challenging because it's so much more technical, and I have no engineering background. Like in the same way I had no science background for Dana-Farber or GMRI. But engineering is really broad. It touches everyday life in ways I don't think everyday people realize. Your cell phone, your computer, the road you drive on, it's all it's all engineering. It's a different kind of engineering in every sense. But it's all engineering, and I do have an interest in a lot of this stuff. Some of it gets really technical and really,
I bet,
really weedy. So that's the stuff that I need to spend more time on. But generally speaking, it's a place that's really cool because a lot of work being done to improve everyday lives with technology that's just going to be so impressive and so mind-blowing, and then it'll just become another thing. But it all started as a kind of as a seed, and that's kind of what a lot of the faculty and certainly graduate students at the College of Engineering here are working on.
So cool. So do you block off time, Kyle, in your calendar to say, this is dedicated, whether you're home or in the office, this is dedicated like desk time to study up on engineering?
Yep. We're pushed out a pretty great deal of information. We get a weekly tranche email that kind of describes research that's been happening, milestones that have been reached. So I usually dedicate time to reviewing that, and then everything that's in it, which can take some time. You need to kind of sift through and make sure you're not spending time on stuff that's kind of not really relevant,
right?
Which can also take some time.
Sure.
And then I am fortunate, as I mentioned, you work kind of specifically with one department, and so I'm really more proficient in stuff that's happening in civil and environmental engineering. And so I spend less time. I spend less time focused on kind of getting up to speed there than I do on, say, electrical and computer engineering or mechanical and industrial engineering. So I spent a little bit more time on that, but no, it's a must to know what's happening, and every week, every month, every quarter, there's different kind of research grants for different areas of research that are being awarded. There's different milestones that are being met. There's different awards that are being given out to different faculty. My department chair was just elected to the National Academy of Engineers, which is like a monumental achievement.
Sure.
and to have a professor like that on that at that academy is pretty special. And so that's another thing that we, I had to spend a lot of time on, but no, it's fun. That's part of the fun part for me.
That's so cool. Thank you for following up on both parts of
Sure.
those questions.
Sure.
Just we're almost up against the time here, Kyle. So
Yeah.
as you look back on your career and again, the really exciting, diverse portfolio you've had of roles and institutions, is there a specific moment or an experience that you can look back on and say, that's when I knew that frontline fundraising suited me well?
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me. And I think it probably won't surprise you what it stems from, but like I said, when I first started at HBS, I was in an entry-level role, reporting up to a couple different assistant directors, and they were fine. They were really good. One of them better than the other. You remember Kristin Naragon? I think she was great. Unfortunately, she decided to go get her MBA at HBS. So about a year into starting. So I would have liked to have, spent more time kind of under her tutelage, but she wisely said yes to that acceptance letter. And, the rest is history there. But it was when I got promoted to a coordinator and started reporting to Nida Januskis. That's when the light bulb really started to go on.
Oh, nice.
And I wouldn't say it was one particular moment, but more a series of moments. And I think it was just the way that Nida really went out of her way to mentor and kind of tutor me. At least that's how it felt. She'd probably tell you it was nothing. But she kind of really, first she let me tag along on meetings and travel. Nice. First, it was kind of local and in Boston and local in New York, which certainly isn't far. Yeah. And then she's like, you know what, you're coming to LA. I'm like, okay, great. All right, you're coming to London.
Wow.
You're coming to London, and oh, by the way, I think I might move to Paris, and so you've got to do the second leg of this trip on your own. Okay. But no, in all seriousness, all along the way, she taught me about how to hustle, how to communicate, how to be kind of, I think, kind of warm and outgoing. And it is one of the easiest people in the world to talk to.
Absolutely.
Easily likable. And I think that's part of this business, frankly, is you need to be likable and you need to get people to want to talk to you.
Right.
And Nida really taught me that at a young age, and she does a great job of that. And so it was really that series of moments, with her as my manager that let me say, you know what, I like this. It's fun. It's not perfect. There's oddities and quirks, and it's
right.
1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 in fundraising, but that's okay. And Nida taught me that, and it was really her support that kind of led me on the path I've been on ever since.
That's dynamite. I appreciate you sharing those examples. And it's, as you were talking, Kyle, I just was thinking I've worked in fundraising my entire career as well. And I have always been struck by just the connections that people can make at certain times and how those connections, typically either continue or you reconnect later, like you and I reconnecting through this. And I think that's really one of the reasons I've stayed in this industry as well, is just the tutelage you get from people, the opportunity to bounce ideas off of other people and to celebrate successes that people have, whether it's moving up, managing teams, bringing in significant gifts. So it's a really rewarding profession for a lot of reasons. And you've touched on quite a lot of those today as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. I wish we had another 20 minutes or so because we didn't get through all of the questions, but like I said earlier before we went live, it's great to see you again. It's been probably 7 years or so. Yep. And just, kind of personally fun to hear you mention names that we both worked with. And certainly I'm proud for you for the success you've had in your career. So keep it up.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. And, hopefully we can go round 2 in a few years.
That'd be great. I look forward to that. And for our audience, you can find Kyle's interview on our website, peopleinfundraising.com. And I have scheduled Kyle's conversation to go live in early August. So look for that on LinkedIn as well.
Cool.
Kyle, thanks again. And everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.